Hello, I'm Sebastian. Welcome to Nine Our Trees podcast. Today, I will summarize and review the book. Odyssey, the Greek myths, reimagined, continues Stephen Fry's lively, story-forward retelling of the classical world by turning to the homecoming journey that has shaped Western storytelling for millennia. Rather than treating Homer's epic as distant literature, Fry approaches it as a living narrative packed with suspense, dark humor, tenderness, and hard-won wisdom. The book follows Odysseus after the Trojan War as he navigates monsters, temptations, divine feuds, and the fragile bonds that hold families and kingdoms together. Alongside the famous set pieces, the reimagining highlights the human costs of heroism, the unpredictability of fate, and the blurred line between cleverness and ruthlessness. Fry's signature clarity makes complex mythic relationships and motivations easy to follow, while his affection for the source material keeps the grandeur intact. The result is an accessible entry point for newcomers and a fresh perspective for longtime myth lovers. I will give you key takeaways from this book. Firstly, Odysseus as a hero of intelligence and consequences. A central idea in this reimagining is that Odysseus is defined less by brute strength than by adaptability, persuasion, and tactical thinking. The story frames him as a figure who survives by reading people, anticipating danger, and turning weakness into leverage. That intelligence, however, is never portrayed as purely admirable. The same talent for manipulation that saves him can also endanger his crew, strain loyalties, and invite retaliation from gods and mortals alike. This approach makes the hero feel modern, he is competent, charismatic, and often morally complicated. The narrative invites readers to examine what society rewards in leaders and what it punishes, especially when success relies on deception or calculated risk. Fry's retelling also underscores that cleverness does not grant control over everything. Pride, impatience, and the desire for recognition can undo careful plans, and a single choice can reverberate for years. In this way, the book becomes a study in how decision-making works under pressure and how even the most capable person must live with unintended outcomes. Odysseus emerges not as a flawless legend, but as a human being navigating a world where brilliance and disaster can be neighbors. Secondly, the gods as unstable forces in human life. The Odyssey is inseparable from divine interference, and this reimagining highlights the gods as personalities with preferences, rivalries, and grudges that spill into mortal affairs. Rather than presenting them as distant symbols, the narrative emphasizes their emotional volatility and the way their conflicts shape the hero's path. Readers see how blessings and punishments can feel arbitrary from a human perspective, turning the journey into a test not only of skill but of endurance and patience. The gods function as a lens for exploring power dynamics. Mortals negotiate with forces they cannot defeat, trying to interpret signs, honor obligations, and avoid offense. This produces a world where religion is not abstract belief but daily risk management. The story also raises questions about justice. When suffering can be caused by divine pride or favoritism, what does fairness mean, and how does a person keep going without certainty that good behavior will be rewarded? Fry's accessible style helps readers track shifting divine alliances while keeping the focus on how those shifts affect ordinary lives, from sailors and servants to rulers and families waiting at home. The result is a mythic universe that feels thrilling and precarious, mirroring how people often experience real-world systems of authority. Thirdly, monsters, trials, and the psychology of temptation. The voyage is famous for its encounters with terrifying creatures and perilous landscapes, and the retelling treats these episodes as more than spectacle. Each trial can be read as an externalized fear or a moral dilemma, the horror of being consumed, the danger of losing identity, the seduction of comfort, and the slow erosion of discipline when survival takes too long. The monsters are not only obstacles but narrative pressure points that reveal character. How a leader communicates, how a crew responds to warnings, and how desperation changes judgment all become part of the drama. The theme of temptation is especially potent, since the journey is filled with opportunities to abandon responsibility in exchange for ease, pleasure, or forgetfulness. The reimagining draws attention to the costs of delay, resources shrink, morale frays, and the goal of home becomes both more precious and more painful. These sequences also show the limits of heroism. No amount of courage can eliminate every hazard, and the smallest lapse in attention can cascade into tragedy. By emphasizing the human reactions inside extraordinary events, Fry makes the myth resonate as a story about self-control, group dynamics, and the persistent challenge of keeping faith with a long-term purpose. Fourthly, homecoming, identity, and the meaning of belonging. The concept of home is not treated as a simple destination, but as a complicated idea that changes over time. Odysseus is pulled forward by longing for Ithaca, yet the years of conflict and wandering reshape who he is, raising the question of whether anyone can return unchanged. This theme turns the journey into a meditation on identity. How much of the self is built from roles such as warrior, captain, husband, or king, and what remains when those roles are disrupted. The Reimagining also explores the tension between public reputation and private reality. A legendary figure may be celebrated across the seas, yet at home, the absence creates vulnerability, political instability, and a vacuum that others try to exploit. The idea of belonging becomes active rather than passive, something that must be reclaimed through action, restraint, and careful judgment. By foregrounding the emotional stakes of return, the story speaks to modern experiences of separation and reintegration, including how people rebuild relationships after long distance, conflict, or personal transformation. Home becomes both a place and a set of commitments, and the narrative asks what it takes to deserve it again. This makes the myth feel relevant to anyone who has chased a goal, only to discover that arrival requires another kind of courage. Lastly, loyalty, marriage, and the people who hold the world together. While Odysseus drives the action, the story also depends on those who endure, wait, and make difficult choices in his absence. This reimagining emphasizes loyalty as a form of strength, not merely passive faithfulness. Penelope's situation reveals the social and political pressures that fall on a household when its ruler is gone, and the narrative highlights the intelligence required to survive constant scrutiny and coercion. Beyond the royal marriage, the book pays attention to servants, allies, and relatives whose decisions determine whether a home remains intact or collapses into chaos. Their roles show that power is rarely sustained by one hero alone. It is supported, challenged, or undermined by networks of obligation and trust. The theme also complicates the romantic ideal of reunion by acknowledging the emotional toll of years of uncertainty. Loyalty can be noble, but it can also be costly, isolating, and psychologically exhausting. By giving weight to these quieter forms of courage, Fry's retelling broadens the myth from an adventure tale into a portrait of a community under strain. Readers are encouraged to consider how relationships survive long trials, and how integrity can be maintained when temptation, fear, and opportunism surround everyday life. In conclusion, this book suits readers who want Greek myth in clear, contemporary language without losing the drama and grandeur that made the Odyssey endure. It is ideal for newcomers who feel intimidated by classic translations, as well as for longtime mythology fans looking for a brisker narrative that still respects the original story's complexity. It can benefit a reader's life by turning an ancient epic into a reflection on practical human challenges: how to lead under uncertainty, how to resist short-term temptations, how to live with the consequences of choices, and how to rebuild a sense of belonging after change. The emotional focus on endurance and homecoming also makes it meaningful for anyone navigating long projects, separation, or identity shifts. Compared with similar myth retellings, Fry's strength is his balance of accessibility and intelligence. He connects characters and divine politics in a way that stays readable while preserving the interwoven cause and effect that makes the myth compelling. The result feels both educational and entertaining, offering a gateway into the wider Greek myth tradition and a satisfying story in its own right. For readers seeking myth as living narrative rather than homework, it is a strong buy. If you would like to support Stephen Fry, you can buy the book through the Amazon link I've provided in the podcast description. After reading the book, please let me know what you think and share your thoughts. See you around.